This is the fifth video in the Republic series in which we talk about all the 10 books in the Republic by Plato. In this video, we'll talk about the fifth book, which continues after the fourth. In the fourth book, Socrates said that wives and children, like the possession of friends, should be held in common. So Polemarchus, in the start of the fifth book, asks Socrates what he means by this. Socrates then says that both the sexes possess the qualities required to rule, and that females will be reared and trained alongside males, receiving the same education and taking on the same political roles. Though he acknowledges that in many respects men and women have different natures, he believes that in the relevant respect, the division among appetitive, spirited, and rational people, women fall along the same natural lines as men. Some are naturally appetitive, some naturally spirited, and some naturally rational. The ideal city will treat and make use of them as such. Socrates says, "Let the wives of our guardians strip, for their virtue will be their robe, and let them share in the toils of war and the defense of their country. Only in the distribution of labors the lighter are to be assigned to the women, who are the weaker natures, but in other respects their duties are to be the same. And as for the man who laughs at naked women exercising their bodies from the best of motives, in his laughter he is plucking a fruit of unripe wisdom, and he himself is ignorant of what he is laughing at or what he is about. For that is, and ever will be, the best of sayings, that the useful is the noble and the hurtful is the base." The thing is, Plato advocates the equal education of women in the fifth book, but it would be inaccurate to think that Plato believed in the modern notion of equality between the sexes. He states in this section that women are inferior to men in all aspects, including intellect. He could not have thought that all women were inferior to all men, or else dividing women into the three classes would make no sense. Instead, he believed that within each class, the women are inferior to the man. So, for instance, guardian women would be superior to men of the other two classes, but inferior to most men of their own class. Socrates then discusses the requirement that all spouses and children be held in common. For guardians, sexual intercourse will only take place during certain fixed times of year, designated as festivals. Males and females will be made husband and wife at these festivals for roughly the duration of sexual intercourse. The pairings will be determined by lot. Some of these people, those who are most admirable and thus whom we most wish to reproduce, might have up to 4 or 5 spouses in a single one of these festivals. All the children produced by these mating festivals will be taken from their parents and reared together, so that no one knows which children descend from which adults. At no other time in the year is sex permitted. If guardians have sex at an undesignated time and a child results, the understanding is that this child must be killed. To avoid rampant unintentional incest, guardians must consider every child born between 7 and 10 months after their copulation as their own. These children, in turn, must consider that same group of adults as their parents, and each other as brothers and sisters. Sexual relations between these groups is forbidden. Socrates explains that these rules of procreation are the only way to ensure a unified city. In most cities, the citizens' loyalty is divided. They care about the good of the whole, but they care even more about their own family. In the just city, everyone is considered as family and treated as such. There are no divided loyalties. As Socrates puts it, everyone in the city says mine about the same things. The city is unified because it shares all its aims and concerns. With regard to the larger topic of family life, we might ask why common families are limited to the guardian class. Given that this arrangement is offered as a guarantee for patriotism, a preemptive strike against divided loyalties Why should it only apply to this class of society? The first thing to point out in relation to this topic is that the restrictions on family life are probably meant to apply to both the guardian and the auxiliary classes. These two classes are, after all, raised and educated together until adolescence, when the rulers are chosen out as the best among the group, so chances are that their lifestyles are the same as well. Plato is often sloppy with the term guardian, using it to imply sometimes only to the rulers and other times to both rulers and warriors. It is likely that the restriction on personal wealth also applies to auxiliaries. The only class left out of this requirement is the producers. Since the producers have little to do with the political life of the city, they do not have to make any decisions pertaining to the city or to fight on behalf of the city. Their patriotism does not matter. Just as we saw that a courageous farmer does no good for the city as a whole, a patriotic craftsman or doctor is irrelevant from the standpoint of the society's good. The producer's only political task is to obey. The final question to be asked is whether this is a plausible requirement, whether anyone can be asked to adhere to this lifestyle with no family ties, no wealth, and no romantic interludes. But before answering this question, Socrates deals with a few other issues pertaining to the guardian's lifestyle, all of them relating to war. He states that children training to become guardians should be taken to war so they can watch and learn the art as any young apprentice does. He recommends that they be put on horseback so that they can escape in the case of a defeat. Socrates also explains that anyone who behaves cowardly in war will be stripped of their role as a guardian. He ends by discussing the appropriate manner in which to deal with defeated enemies. When it comes to Greek enemies, he orders that the vanquished should not be enslaved and that their lands should not be destroyed in any permanent way, because he believes that all Greeks are really brothers, and eventually there will be peace between them again. But when it comes to barbarian, that is, non-Greek enemies, anything is permissible. Moving on, Socrates has procrastinated long enough and must explain how guardians could be compelled to live in this bizarre way. His response is the most radical claim yet. Our system is only possible, he says, if the rulers are philosophers. Thus, he introduces the concept of the philosopher king, which dominates the rest of the republic. To back up this shocking claim, Socrates explains what he means by the term philosopher. Clearly, he cannot mean to refer to the sort of people who are currently called philosophers, since these people do not seem fit to rule. The first step in introducing the true philosopher is to distinguish these special people from a brand of pseudo-intellectuals whom Socrates refers to as the lovers of sights and sounds. The lovers of sights and sounds are basically the people who claim expertise in the particular subject of beauty. In the distinction of the philosopher from the lover of sights and sounds, the theory of forms first enters the Republic. But the thing is that Plato does not explain through Socrates what the forms are, but assumes that his audience is familiar with the theory. Forms, we learn in other Platonic dialogues, are eternal, unchanging, universal absolute ideas such as the good, the beautiful, and the equal. Though forms cannot be seen but only grasped within the mind, they are responsible for making the things we sense around us into the sort of things they are. Anything red we see, for example, is only red because it participates in the form of the red. Anything square is only square because it participates in the form of the square, and anything beautiful is only beautiful because it participates in the form of beauty, and so on. What makes philosophers different from lovers of sights and sounds is that they apprehend these forms. The lovers of sights and sounds claim to know all about beautiful things but cannot claim to have any knowledge of the form of the beautiful. nor do they even recognize that there is such a thing. Because the lovers of sights and sounds do not deal with forms, Socrates claims, but only with sensible particulars, that is, the particular things we sense around us. They can have opinions but never knowledge. Only philosophers can have knowledge, the objects of which are the forms. In order to back up this second radical claim that only philosophers can have knowledge, Socrates basically paints a fascinating metaphysical and epistemological picture. He divides all of existence up into three classes. First, what is completely, second, what is in no way, and third, what both is and is not. What is completely, he tells us, is completely knowable. What is in no way is the object of ignorance. What both is and is not is the object of opinion or belief. The only things that are completely are the forms. Only the form of the beautiful is completely beautiful. Only the form of sweetness is completely sweet, and so on. Sensible particulars both are and are not. Even the sweetest apple is also mixed in with some sourness or not sweetness. Even the most beautiful woman is plain or not beautiful when judged against certain standards. So we can only know about forms and not about sensible particulars. That is why only philosophers can have knowledge, because only they have access to the forms. I briefly summarized the Platonic theory of forms in this video, but I will make a separate video on it soon. So that was it for the fifth book in the Republic, and this is it for this video. I'll see you in the next, in which I'll summarize the sixth book in the Republic.